Good morning, everyone. It is Rachel Wilkins here, co-founder of Conception Arts and art business coach. Delighted to welcome you to our very first session of Coffee with Artists. It's going to be a daily session during the weekdays that we bring to you guys to just highlight some of the amazing artists and the community that we have built over the years here at Conception Arts. And I am thrilled today to be with one of our amazing alumni, twice winner of the Award for Excellence, the only artist that's ever won it twice, the amazing Cam Ridley. So Cam, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Yo, hello. I'm so happy to see you virtually and otherwise. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. So we have our coffee. So if you're joining us, grab yourself a warm beverage. Actually, Cam, you're not drinking coffee. What are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking cacao. I've never tasted coffee in my life. I don't know what it tastes like. Is that weird?
It's not weird at all, actually, because I never had a cup of coffee until I moved to America. So I was a big tea drinker.
Yep.
Now it's like I don't function without my coffee in the morning.
That's my fear. I don't want another thing where I have to use it. I'm good.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm drinking cacao. I had my last few bits of it and I've been kind of hanging on to it because I can't go anywhere to find it. Can't get it on Amazon anymore. Struggle is real.
It sure is. So let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, right now, if you're watching this live, you know full well what's going on. If you're watching this in the future, at any point, we're right smack bang in the middle of quarantine for this dreadful pandemic that we're dealing with right now. Tell us, Cam, how are you navigating this new normal? Where in the world are you right now? How is it impacting you creatively?
You know, it's so interesting because I am in the world. I am in Mississippi. I love it here. I moved here last year, so it's been fantastic being here because this is the land in which I grew up and I was raised on. So if you know me, I'm a tree hugger. And so the land really speaks to me. And I've been outside a lot in my backyard. I've got this huge backyard space where I can just go out and paint and be literally. So I am a human being in my backyard in Mississippi. So that's fantastic, and I feel very blessed. I feel like the pandemic made me really do the thing that I tell other artists to do, and that's think and reflect. And I remember about 2 years ago, I said, if I could have anything in the world, I would love to just be in a cave where, nobody, like when I come out, the world doesn't speed ahead of me. Because that was always my fear when I took time off. That's great. I could take 3 or 4 months off, but the world keeps going.
Right.
But like now the world stopped. And I did. I went into the cave, which is like my backyard or the closet. Sometimes my bathroom. I create a lot in the bathroom now. I don't know why.
Is that to get away from your children and your dog and all the other life things that are happening?
The dog comes in the bathroom. She is relentless.
That's amazing.
But the kids, maybe. I don't know. The bathroom just became like the thing. I like to sit in the bathtub and then I kind of hang myself out of the ledge of the bathtub like this and do like this little creative. It's weird.
Hey, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. No judgment here.
Thank you. Judgment free.
I love what you said about having that time to stand still while the world is not racing ahead, because it's such a point, right? It's such a unique time that we're experiencing right now, where literally everybody is having to hit that stop and halt. My family in England are quarantined. People on the other side of the globe in Australia are quarantined. Like the whole world is standing still right now, and it's so uniquely it's a unique opportunity in a way for us to really hit that reset button ourselves creatively. Are you finding that you still have that creative urge, or are you still just processing everything that's going on around you?
Oh, I have the urge. I have been creating like crazy. My problem with it's not even really a problem. It's just that I don't know when to stop. Time doesn't, time just keeps going. And so I don't have a stop button. So I'm just going. I have all these ideas in my head that I want to create, and I'm a collaborative creator.
Mm.
And so I can't now at this point reach out to other creators and say, hey, come to the studio or let me come over and let's do da 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 da, because everyone is on this 6 feet distance. So that's been the difficult part for me because I have a million ideas. But again, I really like to create with other creators.
Mm.
I like my alone space, but when it comes down to let's put something into the world, I just believe, the
Mm.
power of two is better. 3, 4, whatever.
That's awesome. All right. So before we kind of jump into this, I just want to let everybody out there know who's watching that if you have any questions for Cam or any questions for me, just chime in the comments section. And what we'll do is towards the end of the session, we're going to take the questions or comments that you may have, and Cam's going to answer them on the live feed. So Cam, tell us a little bit about your backstory. Tell us how you became creative, or were you born creative? Tell us a little about your journey into what it is that you're doing right now.
All right. Hello. My name is Cam. I just go by Cam now because I'm in between last names. I love this part of my life. All right. So here's how I got here. I was born creative. I knew that from a very, very young age, but my creativity wasn't fostered at a young age. So I was born creative, but I was trained to be a worker. And I did just that. I went to college and I excelled. I was student body president and all that jazz. And once I got out, I was a news reporter, which is quasi creative, except they put me on this murders and crime beat, which is not my personality at all. I'm a smiler. So I went through that whole process for a few years, learning the business, learning how to really write and be and see the world differently. Because again, crime and murders, it's not something I was exposed to. So once I had an opportunity to get out of that via pregnancy, when I got pregnant with my first kid, I was like, hey, I quit. I can't chase crime or murders or hurricanes anymore. I quit. I ended up selling drugs for the great state of the United States, pharmaceutical company. That was a lucrative job, but again, not what I wanted to do because it's just, I'm a salesperson, but I like to sell things I believe in, and I just don't believe in drugs like that. So if you know me, you know me. So there's that point. And then I found myself pregnant again. Fast forward. And that's when the creativity came out because I had these little babies and I was like, oh my God, I want to take pictures. And Ann Geddes was coming out at the time and she was putting them in the little sacks. They looked like they were in utero. And I was just like, oh my God, how do I do that? And all these memories flooded back from when I was a child. And I remember having a camera in my hand constantly. I remember going in the dark room, exposing film, and how happy I was. And that day I decided to quit my job, went home and enrolled in CDIA at Boston University. And that was the beginning of Cam the Artist. I haven't looked back since '07. Wow. That was a
Wow.
quick blast from the past. So that all started in '07, and I had the most amazing professors at BU who really just fostered um, creativity and thinking outside of the box. They taught me what I needed to know with photography, but they also pushed me in a way that was like, hey, you really are an artist, so create. And it took, another maybe 9 years before I even understood what that meant. But I met you guys. Fast forward to those 9 years. I moved to New York because I thought I wanted to be on Broadway. I auditioned for a few plays and I thought I was, yeah. And some things went womp, womp, womp. But I heard about Conception Art Show and I thought, I'm going to put my photography in the show. And when I reached out to you guys, I remember the welcome. Like you sent me this welcome and you were like, we can't wait to have you, artist. First time anyone ever addressed me as an artist. And I was like, oh, I'm an artist. Okay. I'm an artist. I went to the show and I won that show. It was the first art show I'd ever done. It was in New
Wow.
York City. I won the show and it opened me up to a whole community of new artists, to new platforms. I started painting more. I started using different mediums. I became less afraid to say that I'm an artist because I always thought photography was photographer. You shoot weddings or Portraits, but that too is an art form. And I don't know. You guys really opened me up. So after conception happened, I started creating, but I realized that my financial self was suffering
Mm.
during that creativity. And then I started reaching out to other artists and incubators to try and figure out how to put it together. And again, conception was so um, pivotal. And how do you turn art into a business and raise a family off of it? And the pieces started to come together. I entered the next show in what was that, 2019,
Hmm.
with this out of the box paper mache tree idea
Awesome.
that just came in my head one day and won the show again. And I was just like, that can't be a fluke. It can't be. And it
Mm-mm.
really just established that number one, there's a purpose for it, even if it's a paper mache tree, because art does change the world. And number two, you got to keep creating and you got to keep your eye like really laser focused on what you want. And what I want is to live and work as a creative and not struggle. And I'm not
Mm.
afraid to say that anymore because
That's
struggle used to be
amazing.
like a cool thing. I'm a struggling artist.
Right.
Mm,
The starving artist myth.
yeah. Well, I went through that phase and I think that it was part of the growth. But if you
Mm.
can mitigate that 10 years of hunger
Hmm.
and still grow, then I think it's a win-win.
I remember that first show when you won. Just seeing the joy. I think you had a bunch of family that had come in from Mississippi, and
Yeah.
I swear I have it on video somewhere. I have to dig it out of the archives. But there was just such shock on your face that this was actually happening, but just so much joy. You were jumping around, you were dancing, and I remember thinking to myself, "That's why we do this. Like that's why we work hard. That's why our team work hard to put these shows together. You know, sometimes there's like any business, there's challenges and there's bumps in the road, but just seeing that moment and experiencing it in real time, I'm like, that's it. That's what it's
Yo,
all about,
I'm
right
back
there.
in that moment right now. It was so crazy.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. It's like, I can't believe it. Like, whatever.
you
It's
better
just a
believe it.
crazy, crazy moment that I dreamt up probably in seventh grade when I first had that camera. And here it is manifesting itself.
Hmm.
25, 6, 7. I'm not telling y'all my age. 30 years later.
So for somebody out there that's tuning in right now, and just a reminder, folks, if you do have any questions for Cam, just add them in the comments. I'm seeing a bunch of likes and hearts, so that's awesome. Just tell somebody who might not be familiar with your work, describe what it is, describe your process, describe your vision, your goal, your objectives, what you hope people take away when they experience it.
Yep. If you're just tuning in, I'm a photographer by trade. I went to BU trained to be a photographer, but my artistry is, I call it intuitive art, because the way that my process works is I go to sleep. And in my dream realm, I open myself up to whatever spirit wants to bring to me. And I see vivid dreams. So when I dream in color, that's when I know it's time to create. And so I love to create with natural elements. I'm a tree hugger. I'll say it over and over. I even have a shirt that says I'm a tree hugger. So I love to create with things that we as humans sometimes take for granted, like we cut down trees constantly and then we reuse them for things like paper, but then we throw the paper away. So I like to reuse them for things that are substantial. I put them in my artwork. So my artwork always has mixed mediums. I use a lot of recycled metals. The first art show with Conception, the project was called The Fashion Issue,
Mm.
which is really describes most of my work. I love fashion. I love everything in the aesthetic of it. I love the beauty of it. I love how you can blend patterns and colors and textures and really go wild. But what I found with fashion is that it becomes a bit shallow sometimes,
Mm.
and people just become the hangers. So the issue, when I shoot fashion, I like to make sure that we're incorporating social consciousness, like what's happening in the world. And so the fashion issue was shot with with the vein of our entertainment trophies in mind. Like
Mm.
the Oscar was the marquee piece, and our Oscar is given to all of the top artists here in America, but the disproportionate rate at which all American artists get it are it's pretty terrible. So it was printed on metal, which is also a mixed medium. The metal came from my grandmother's barn, which most people, if you've heard the story, once you recycle something, I believe it lives again. Which was long story short. What was your question again?
Well, describe for somebody who maybe never seen your work, kind of in layman's terms, what your work is like, what it's about. I just remember that one series. I mean, for anybody who hasn't actually physically seen this series, it was an African American beautiful man who is painted all in gold in the style of an Oscar, right? He's positioned in the style of an Oscar. So tell us about that shoot. Like, how did that experience unfold? How did you take it from concept to execution? And what did that feel like to actually see something come to life like that?
That was insane. That shoot involved a lot of trust. It was not the first time I'd seen a naked man, obviously.
You have a
But
couple of kids, so I hope not.
right, something happened there. But it was the first time that I had to ask someone in the vein of artistry, like, hey, can you get naked and let me take your photo? I'd always wanted to do that, by the way. So bucket list, it was checked off. How does it come from concept? I had a dream about, right after the Oscars, I had a dream about all these gold people lining up. And all I could see was myself and my friends in these sort of, and these bodies inhabiting these gold people. And I thought, how great would it be to really explore where that came from? And I went on Google, like most of us do, and started researching the beginnings of Oscar and realized that Oscar was based off of the Egyptian god Ptah, and he's the god of creativity. And I thought, well, that's so fascinating to think that Egyptian culture yet again influenced American culture. We took that culture and by propaganda, by media, by whatever, it turned into something that is very whitewashed. And I say the term not to be, to point out race, but it's just, it's whitewashed.
It's the truth.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Oscar's so white.
Mhm.
But I thought, how interesting would it be to paint? And he was a black man, but how would you even know that? He was all gold. And I always question that to people because they always say, oh, he's a black man. And I'm like, how do you know?
He's a
He's
gold
all
man.
gold.
Right.
There's no skin showing at all.
Mm.
And so I really make people dig into what it is to be a certain race, nationality, or what features do we move to black people or to white people? Because actually, one of the guys in the shoot was not black at all. And I put him on multiple shows alongside the black people, and they're like, oh, this is all black art. And I think, they're all painted a different color. But anyway,
You're
the
kind of
bottom
challenging
line,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, what were you saying?
I was just going to say you're kind of challenging people's unconscious bias.
Yeah. And the bottom line was to think about, what do we see in the media and what do we assign to those characters upon seeing features? Just features, not even skin tone. Because again, my work dealt with the features of a character, and that character was Oscar. He was born of Ptah, which happened to be a black man. So I used a black man for the statue. But for the SAG award, that his nationality is race is certainly not black. His skin tone, though, is darker, which was interesting. But everyone pinpointed him to just being, just everybody else. I thought,
So how
okay.
was it received? I know that I've seen images of kind of it on TV shows, and you got a lot of attention around that subject matter. Tell me about how it was received and what kind of, if there was anything interesting or surprising about how it was received.
I was very surprised that, again, people called it, I was surprised that people called it black art. It just really shocked me because I just create art. And so it was my intention to play with the theme of racial tension, not even tension, but racial biases and social biases. But that was the shocking part. But it was even more shocking that people did all around receive it in a positive light. I always And let me just no, I don't always. I do assume at some points that humanity will never change. And so race is what it is and people will just be people. But on a grand scheme, when I went into this project, I remember we did one thing that I'd never done with another project, and we meditated and we prayed before we did it. And we asked that it be received in the light that we wanted it to be surrounded in.
Mm.
And the men who were involved with the project really poured their intention into it. I poured my intention into it. And so it surprised me that it worked. And I hate to say it out loud, but I have to be very transparent like, when shit works. You hear about it and you're like, hey, manifest it, put your intention into it.
Mhm.
If you intend for it to be something positive and good, then don't drag all this other stuff outside the vortex
Mm.
into it. Stay focused.
Mhm.
And then it actually worked. And I was like, whoa. So I did get a lot of attention. I was able to paint live on news stations here in Mississippi, where it
Wow.
is controversial to have a half naked man on the news, no matter what the color is, being body painted. And here I am slathering this guy up. I loved it. I bet those ladies who had just finished The Price is Right got their whole life. Great.
I'm like, what channel have I tuned into here? What is this?
Right? So the process was it was just exhilarating,
Mm.
and so for any artist who has this idea that it won't work, I would say go back and put your intention into it. So what's the intention? Because our intention, we didn't know if it would work or not. We didn't know how it would be received, but our intention was for it to start a conversation,
Mm.
period. Like a really serious conversation, but also give you a platform and give you a lighthearted way where you're like, oh, oh, that is a Oscar. What's he doing? Okay, this is a art piece about we didn't know Oscar was based off of Egyptian god. What was this god about? So it really starts a trickle effect about conversation. That's what I want people to do.
And did you have any really interesting or profound conversations that came out of that project? Was there any success stories that you think really where perhaps people's hearts or minds were changed or influenced? Was there anything that came out of it that you were like, wow, this
Yes.
this my intention came to fruition?
What came out of it is that people really understood the beauty of touch again.
Mm.
And it had nothing to do with the aesthetic beauty of the piece. Once I started showing the piece, I started performing live paintings, painting people live, allowing people to paint on me live, doing the mixing of the paint because the paint is organic. I use a lot of natural fruits or extracts. It's all vegan paint, and so it's safe for kids. And what I've realized is it took on this movement of the sacred art of body painting and touch and connection again. And
Mm.
people were really fascinated with just what it was like to be painted on as a canvas, because most people think the canvas is, our walls. But when I paint on people, it's a very meditative process.
Mm.
And I also put my energy in, I have a calm spirit when I'm painting. So I think that that transfers into people. Plus, I have, this ability to just talk with people and put their mind at ease and let them forget that there may be, 50 or 100 people watching you be painted net live. It's fine. It's all normal. It's all good. Just do it. So I think that the movement of connection and touch really happened for me. That changed my life. It
Mm.
allowed me to realize that number one, um, I didn't realize that I had an intimacy, not a problem, but an intimacy barrier
Mm.
around myself. And so it helped me connect with my friends and loved ones even more so because I would go home after painting these people, having amazing connections, and think to myself, when's the last time I really just embraced my people?
Mm.
The people I see every day. When's the last time we just sat and talked or held hands or did anything that wasn't, special when
Mm.
it's a special night? So that was the interesting thing. It brought the human connection back to me.
Wow.
That
That's
makes
all.
sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it had a personal impact on you as well as a public impact on the folks that were experiencing the work. I mean, it's a very visceral, human experience when you see this stuff up close, and to think that you were able to have even a deeper level through that form of expression, for it to impact your personal life and your familial relationships is that not what we all strive for in our art?
Right. I needed to spill over because there really is no separation.
Mhm.
My kids see my artwork and I want them to see it. I want them to understand that this is my job, but it's
Mhm.
also a lifestyle. You don't turn it on and off.
Mhm.
It's functional. Sometimes it's chaotic and functional at the same time. But um, gosh, to to have other people really connect in a way where you realize that, well, you just become more aware. That's
Mhm.
it. That's all I want. I want the world to be more aware, and I don't want to shift their perspective one way or the other. That's not my job.
Right.
But I do want to put a pinpoint on, like, what are you thinking about during the day?
Mhm.
What are you paying attention to? Where are your awarenesses? Are you paying attention to what you're touching now that COVID-19 is here? I have now started to become more aware of how often I do this to my face.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, let me go wash my hands.
Yep.
But the awareness has to be there.
Mhm. It's certainly keeping, well, for me, I'm going to keep it on what it's doing for me. It's forcing me to keep my head where my feet are, right? I can't be 20 steps ahead. I can't be thinking, what if, what this, because none of us know. None of us have any concept of this. We've never experienced this before. Like, obviously it happened in the early 1900s with the Spanish flu, but on this level, on this stage of just uncertainty, like there's so little that we can control about this experience that just I'm finding that if I keep my head right where my feet are and I try and stay as present as possible, that I can handle, right? That I can deal with. I can have conversations with beautiful people like you and be in that moment right at that time. And that's a great lesson, right?
As you were saying that, I was just imagining like these floating stars because it's so dark behind you. It's like there's a universe behind her and there's floating stars and it's just right there with you. Like,
I feel like Mork. Remember that show, Mork and Mindy, where he kind of floats through the.
yep.
Yeah, I need to do something with this background for
You should have
sure.
told me. I would have put up my black backdrop. We could have
Um,
done it together.
maybe I just shouldn't have worn a black shirt. Maybe that next time I need to wear some color. But one thing I was thinking about with you is you're kind of like a superwoman because how many children do you have, first of all? Four?
I have four. I
Okay.
birthed three, and then my stepson's name is Cam as well. He was meant to be
Oh,
mine. So there's four of them.
so you're a mom of four. You are obviously an artist, but tell us about the more holistic things and the more spiritual things that you do, and maybe share a little about how those two things, or all of those things collide.
Right.
Artist, spiritual. You're a shaman. So
Hmm.
tell us about those things individually and how they all kind of come together to make up the amazing Cam.
Thank you. Well, I was born into shamanism. I was born in Mississippi, and so my family grew up on a reservation here in Mississippi, and part of them still lives there, but we are part Native American and Black too. You know. So that part is natural. You just have to open yourself up. I believe that the people on the planet now, and this is speaking spiritually, I believe that every soul on the planet right now came for a reason. We were all somewhere else and we were like, hey, y'all, the earth is going to need us in 2020 because it's about to go down. And so we all agree that we're going to come back in some form. Thank God that we found each other and we're starting to really recognize it in this spiritual and physical form. But during this process, over the last 7 to 10 years, I've opened myself up to being able to hear messages from our ancestors, hear messages that God would like for me to hear directly, to give to people. And it doesn't matter who. I know these messages are for other people because they most times have nothing to do with my life. And they come through so strong
Mhm.
that I knew that I would have to share this gift with the world. That's when I became the resident shaman at Om Life when I was in New York and New Jersey. So that was a great experience. But when I moved here, I started doing online virtual readings because that's just the way of the world. Then everything happened that really went online and virtual. And this is such uncertain terms. I've spent lots of time in my backyard meditating, opening myself up to what the earth is saying to us at this point. So that is the spiritual side. I'm very open to the earth and what the world um, needs at this moment, and I believe that I'm a messenger, and so I'm open to giving those messages through my art, um, which blends in the art. They come in dreams. In my dream realm, the art usually comes. What's the project? What's the purpose? And then I flush it out in this physical life. When I wake up, I'm like, oh, there were gold people. What does that relate to? You know what I'm saying? It's all it's all a very intuitive process,
Mm.
and I know that I'm connected to such a higher being than just this body that I trust it. Inexplicable trust. Like that is the faith that I have here on this planet. Because when we talked during my artistry, I don't have like I'm not a particularly a painter. I am a photographer. I'm all of these things, right? So we talk about creating fearlessly, and that's what we did
The
in the
podcast.
podcast. I still live by that, but I've taken it a step further because in creating fearlessly, you also have to make sure that you're not being reckless. Because sometimes when you drop the fear, which I've learned, and this is me. I learned to drop this fear of putting myself out there, being creative, or just being who I am at this moment. But I started to become reckless, like I don't give a, or
Mm.
screw, what's it all for? There's no purpose. And then I started to become just like, why am I even going to get up and create if it's just going to turn out to be it was just a downward spiral, and I did go through that for a bit. And so that fearlessness for me became very reckless, and I had to pull myself out of that. And so when you saw my cup, it says the archivist says F what they think. I don't know if you can see it. It really doesn't mean like F the world.
Okay.
It just means F what they think. They are the versions of me that don't even matter anymore.
Mm.
When I was saying um, I was reckless and not seeing the purpose in it, those were other versions of myself not wanting to elevate.
Mm.
And I was just like, man, how does that translate into creating? Well, number one, I don't like to create from a negative space, so I didn't create. And fearlessly, I stopped creating for the moment and said, F what they think. All the other days had to identify who they were that didn't belong within me anymore or support my growth. And then, once I realized that, I was like, oh, all right, I'm back to a center. Let's create.
Mhm.
So, which brings me to what am I creating now? I've decided to launch a brand new business within my art stream. I was a photographer to start with, but during all of this, I thought, how do you best service the world? Which is always what I want to think, or what mark do you leave on the world? And so I became a funeral photographer. I've rebranded my entire business to focus solely on funeral photography. That was at the beginning of this year, before the pandemic even hit. And I also now offer virtual funerals because in light of social distancing, you can't have more than 10 people in a room. But
Mm.
I believe that you should be able to honor the departed and say what you need to say in those moments as a normal funeral would. So our company started to offer virtual funerals around the United States, and we send a videographer there to live stream. And it's been really, it's a way that you can archive history
Mm.
and be a part of what's happening, and also understand in those moments the compassion that people need, the humanity. And I like to capture all parts of humanity. I think that's what news left with me as well, the good, the bad, the indifferent, like you need to see it all.
I have a lot of questions.
Lots.
First
Oh,
of all,
I got time.
first of all, why funerals? Where did something happen? Do you have a particular experience? I mean, I've never even heard of a photographer at a funeral. Is that a new thing? Is it
Mm-mm, not at all.
maybe
Um, it's
maybe
new in the United States for sure.
okay? Because in
Well,
the UK, I've never seen, but I think I've only ever been to one funeral here in the US. So
mm,
tell me,
um, I'll tell you, funeral photography. Back in 1981, I
hero.
was born.
Me too.
Uh, Hey, there we go. We're 80s babies. Also in 1981, my father departed this life.
Mm,
He died of cancer. I was 11 months old. So as I was coming in, he was going out literally. My mother had the foresight to have a photographer at the funeral because she knew that I would have no idea what he looked like, departed or not. And as I got older, I did have all of these questions about my father. And unfortunately, my mom and dad didn't have the greatest relationship. So when she would tell me stories, it was more like, I was about to divorce him, but then, she would probably hate me for saying this, but whatever. um, but it was like a story. It wasn't always great, but I would have this book and I would look back because it had pictures when he was alive. It had his obituary. It even had like my mom had got a pen and scribbled my little writing in there. So it had things from 1981, my family, all these photos, and I thought, what a healing element for me. And it really did. It kept me out of, it brought me out of deep depressions in my life where I didn't feel like I knew another half of me or how to put, where did I get these eyes from? Because they're like this crazy color brown. Nobody else had them. But I looked through the book and I would look through my dad's photos and I'm like, he had these hazel eyes. I got it now. So anyway, that became such a healing element when 2019 hit. I told you I started fearlessly, recklessly going down a spiral.
mm,
I asked God to lead me to something that was purposeful and something that would really help me and others heal. And funeral photography kept coming up over and over and over. And I pulled out the book. I actually have it. Hold on. I kid you not, I keep it really close.
Wow.
It's I still have the book, but what's interesting, so this was my dad's book. It still has the pages, like the laminate and everything. But I keep it really close and it's just become such a guiding force for life. And so when I introduced the concept of funeral photography here in the US, I'm the first company to say that I am a funeral photographer. Everyone kind of gives me these strange looks like, are you photographing the body? Like what are you taking photos of?
Right.
And so I tell them, and this is what happens. I photograph the day. It's a story. And
Mm,
it's the day that someone departed this earthly journey and went to wherever else we're going. And so what's going to happen during that day is I become a fly on the wall and then I take all of these amazing captures because it's the one time, the one day where everyone's allowed to be human, where men can cry freely, and where they can hug each other without thinking, it's a bro code. It's the one time where siblings who may have been at odds for 10 or 20 years will see each other again and may bury the hatchet. Who knows what will
mm,
happen? But it is a real moment and nobody has these defenses up. And so
mm,
if I can become a fly on the wall and capture that, I put the stories into a leather bound album like you would a wedding album. And I'm a journalist or a former journalist, so I still write. I capture these stories that I hear and I'll write out everything. It's just become a beautiful tribute. So as I'm growing the company, and it's a slow process because there's an education,
mhm.
it's become such a amazing way to stretch my artistry and leave an imprint on the world. These books are going to outlast all of us. And it's
Wow.
an heirloom. It's an heirloom album.
You don't think of that there would be beauty in the despair, but just the way the things that you described, I'm thinking about funerals that I've attended over the years, and there are those really beautiful moments of seeing people who you may not have had the best relationship with over the years, or just that being reunited and sharing that commonality of remembrance.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's such an interesting concept, but I'm sure, like you said, there's a level of education that needs to happen because it is such a personal experience, right? It's very intimate, right? So how do you even broach that with the families or with those that are attending? I mean, I imagine people are confused if they're seeing somebody pointing a photographer at them at a funeral, because it is something that's so unexpected. So how do you approach that?
Um, well, that is where the shamanism and spirituality all merge as well, because again, my spirit precedes me. I know that. So I also know that God isn't going to put me in a room or in a place with someone who I'm not supposed to be in contact with.
Mm.
So if I'm in that position, then I already approach it with this certain amount of confidence that I was already meant to be there. But to be very specific, I talk to the funeral homes. I speak directly with the funeral directors, and I tell them my story, what it is that I want to do, because it's not just for me to make money. It's a service and it's a healing tool, and it's also a day that people can never get back, right? So on that vein, I tell the funeral directors my story. I leave materials, sample albums that people can touch and feel and go through when they're planning the arrangements. And I let the funeral directors pitch my service for me. That's the first thing. But then on the World Wide Web, you have to have social media interactions. What I've been doing during this quarantine is getting personal stories from
Mm.
people who, and not that they've used my service, but people who have heard about my service now and thought, I wish I would have known about it, because now it's too late, or now I can't get this day back. Or, there have been so many times in my photography career where I've photographed someone's family or child or whatever event. And then a month later, they may pass away, and I have been the last person to have those images. I never take that for granted. That's why I call myself the archivist,
Mm.
because I archive everything in life, period. I don't take any one photo for granted, because it means something to someone.
Mhm.
To some moment, it happened, won't get it back. So I think those testimonials, the more and more I put them out, the more and more you talk to people and I talk to people, it'll just become apparent. I know this is a genre I'm supposed to start, funeral photography, but
Mm.
I don't want to rush it. I don't
Right.
want it to become saturated like wedding photography, because it means a lot. Honoring the departed isn't just a money thing. You got to take it serious if that's what you're going to do.
So how do you think that could translate into the art world? Do you think there's a connection there where, obviously it is something very personal, but do you think there's any element of that you could perhaps bring over into this realm of, the art world and expressing
Oh,
yourself?
you are going to be blown away when you see some of the images I shot in New Orleans. Funerals are art in New Orleans. The mausoleums, the second line, the pageantry, the way they dress, the beating. And I've already had permission from some of the clients that I've shot to use their images in a gallery, because it's, it is so amazing when you see how different cultures
Mm.
honor the departed. It is art in itself, just the process, right? So just like weddings have different processes, and you have different veils and gowns and dress, so many funerals, which I've learned, have so many different cultural aspects to it.
Mm.
And it's really just an extension of anything else I've done that deals with the social consciousness of this world. So I'm now digging into the cultures of how we bury our dead. It's no different than, how we give out awards.
Mm.
But I think there's beauty in it. It's just you have to, again, find it. You have to look for it. You have to be conscious and aware that beauty exists with the pain. And once you find it, you can have those two coexist. I've taken some breathtaking images that, I mean, I've got this one that stands out. It just brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. There's this woman, she's playing a bagpipe at a funeral of one of our state troopers who passed away. And it was raining, and they uh, uh, straightened the flag out because they were about to fold it. but it was just the way the water came off of the flag and there was drops and she was in the bagpipe and there was the sunset. I mean,
Wow.
it was a breathtaking image. And I
Wow.
even looked at it, I was like, I shot that? And I said, I didn't shoot that. God shot that. Like that's when you know your art is moving through you.
Mm,
Like you're just the vehicle. My hands did it, my body did it, but that was an out of body moment. So yeah, those moments I can't wait to express and be able to bring. I just have to wait for the right moment.
right.
I don't want to, there's this exploitive, like sort of,
Right.
and that's never my intention.
Mm,
And so I have to make sure that I'm very pure before everything gets put out. You know what I mean?
yeah. I'm excited to see where you take it because I know it, knowing your artistry and how you approach things, I know there's going to be something really beautiful that comes out of it. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out. So a couple of fun questions. Let's switch gears a little bit. Who would you say has been the biggest influence on your career? My
Uh,
career loosely, and it can incorporate all of the stuff. all of
right? I'm I'm
the,
thinking about it, and let me just say, on my career, I'm gonna say my mom and my aunties. Like seriously, these ladies are so freaking creative. It drives me insane. But they all have like very 9 to 5 jobs, but that's just the era they were raised in. But when they unleash their brains, man, it comes out right. So they create and I'll tell them I need something, they'll create it right from anything in the house. So they are my biggest influences. They have allowed me also the space to create and encouraged me. So I'd love to say like Basquiat or, and I do have those influences. Um, but my mom and my aunties are like the biggest influence because they're just creative force women.
Mhm.
We're a family of women.
Well, it sounds like you were raised by women, right? Since your father
Mhm.
passed away young, I was too. My father was out of the picture very young, and I grew up seeing those strong women, the resourceful, like historically throughout my family, like even during the Second World War, my grandmother would always manage to feed the family of six. It was just
Right.
they got shit done,
Hmm.
and I think that I hear that from you as well. That has a lasting impact on
It
you
does.
as a
It
person.
changed the way, because even here, we are quarantined. They say essential items. I think art items are essential, but I get it. And so I do stay home and I don't go to Hobby Lobby or pick up all the little things I need, but it's forced me because the kids are here to kind of find things or we're juicing, we're making paint. And I mean, we're very resourceful for what we want to create around here. And the art doesn't stop. It just makes you think different.
Hmm. That's awesome. So then, if you could have anybody from dead or alive, if you could have coffee or whatever warm beverage we have, with anybody, artist, visual artist, musician, somebody from the past, present, future, who would it be?
Prince.
I like it. Why?
Prince.
Why Prince?
I think Prince is an artist who would get the very unique position that I'm in, right? Because I am a hometown town girl. I love Mississippi, like born and raised here, but it's a little country, and it doesn't offer some of the things that bigger cities that I've lived in, like Orlando and Miami and New York and Jersey offer. So I've come back home, right? And I believe that Prince was able to find this really unique artistry right in his hometown in Minnesota. Right? And he didn't have to, he learned to explore the world and be of the world, but not in the world. Like he made his home where his home was. And I would love to know how he was able to exist in such a out there way in a small town because he seemed really happy. Uh, and I just think he was such a dope artist. People always say Prince or Michael. I say there's no comparison.
Mhm.
Prince let the art come through him.
Mhm.
Ah, gosh, that guy was good.
It was amazing. It's a big loss. So in that case, Oh, let me ask you this then. What has been the most meaningful or profound moment that you've had as a creative person? Has there been something that just really meant a lot to you personally?
There are so many. I'm trying to pinpoint the one. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
say that the personally the thing that's meant the most to me is having people support me from moving to from a career like journalism and pharmaceutical sales, and I was also once a teacher into artistry and I mean artistry where I'm painting people naked, or I'm painting myself, or I'm just walking out doing something that most people may not understand at the moment. So having that amount of support for art means more than anything I can describe
Mm,
because growing up, I didn't think that art was a thing. I knew it was a thing. I just didn't think it was a functional career because it wasn't the way I was raised. But
mm.
the same people who raised me also supported my decision when I said, "No, this is who I am." And they were like, "Okay, we got it. So, what do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, I love you guys. Yes, I need a camera. I need tuition. I need." But no, that was it. Having support, hands down.
Mm, that's amazing. I think it's society tells us different as well. Society tells us that it's not a serious career, or we should definitely get that fallback career just in case it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
It's not always just what you hear in the home; it's what you see in the public realm or on the media. I mean, I know for me that was very impactful. It's like I can't be an artist, or can't have a career in the arts. I need to do something proper, something serious. You know.
Right? That is it, and I mean, and then unless you were, like, famous, and what is famous anyway? And then
Mm,
how do you get famous? You gotta start, like, you don't just come out famous, you gotta start somewhere.
right.
So, I just think having that support has been tremendous.
Mm.
So, if you can find a support team as an artist, and it doesn't have to be family, just find a support team.
Find your tribe, find your people. You know.
Yeah, man. I love kids. I surround myself with kids constantly because they are just full of energy, but they also allow you to, well, some of them allow you to make mistakes.
Mm.
Other ones will point that shit out so quick. And they're like, girl, that's ugly. Like, no, it's not ugly.
That was going to be one of my questions actually. How do you feel that your creativity and spirituality and everything impacts your children? Are you seeing that in their as they grow up? Are you seeing anything of yourself in them? And how does that feel?
Oh, yes, I have seen myself split into many versions of me, except they've all taken on very drastically different parts of my personality.
Mm,
So, gosh, but so artist-wise, my daughter has become quite the little artist, and she's definitely taken after just wanting to create. When she feels that she's stressed out, she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go make a video and create a song," and she's mixing in her room. What was that? 2 days ago, I found her spray painting my fence, and she's like, "I was gonna surprise you." I'm like, "Yeah, it's beautiful. Why did she use black?" It's black spray paint.
oh my God.
My sons are creative in their own ways. I found though that when I first started, so they're older, so they caught me when I was younger in my career, which also means that I tortured the shit out of them. Always a camera in their face, always like, go, 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 let's create, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. And they were burned out by 6. So they used to draw and do all that stuff, but they've taken a step back. However, clever mom always has a plan. I'm always molding. So whatever they do, I'm molding it for them to be a creator of the thing and not just a doer of the thing.
Mm,
So even if it's video games, it's fine that you play them, but also figure out how you can create something or elevate this to something different than just the doing of it.
mm. I
So
love
yeah, shape the minds a little.
that's amazing. All right, so we've got about 6 minutes left. So is there anyone who has any questions who's on the live feed now? Jump on in and we will have the lovely Cam give you her feedback. I know we've got a couple of people watching on YouTube as well. If you have any questions for Cam, just chime on in. Hi, everybody. Hi, Sergey. Hey, Linda. Good to see you. People wishing us to stay safe and healthy. Yeah, it's crazy, crazy times. So yeah, anyone has any questions, just jump on in. And Cam, let's take this 5 minutes, just tell people where they can learn more about you and how they can work with you and what you have going on and where they can find you.
All right. So I am Cam of the Camera Photography. Doop, doop, doop. And I am a funeral photographer. My website is www.thecamera.com. And also, I've just launched my other brand. It's called myfuneralplanner.org. And that's the brand. Myfuneralplanner.org is the website. But I'd really love for you to go over there and take a look, because there are two things that are offered there that are really important. Number one, it's a funeral planner. And I know we're all living right now, but the information inside the downloadable planner that's free will really help put you and your loved ones in a position where it's not a stressful time of transition, because there is information people have to know when you're transitioning. And, like it or not, you are born to die. And that just is a fact. So my funeral planner is something that we're offering. And then the virtual funerals are what we're doing. If you would like to work with me, unfortunately, you'd have to be in the departed realm right now. And I don't wish that on you, but my services are available if you would like to prepay for those. Just saying. Yeah, that was a hard one. My God. I'm like, how do you broach that? Can someone please give me media coaching for that particular question? How does someone work with you? You have to die. Jeez. No. And then if you want to be painted, I am still doing paintings once social distancing stops. But I haven't worked that out. I was thinking maybe I should do just a pre-booking thing, but I've got this tug of war with myself sometimes, where during times of trauma, and maybe you could help me out since we've got a few seconds, during times of trauma and tragedy, everyone discounts things, right? And services, but I am a luxury service. And so I always have this tug of war, like, do you offer a discounted rate for in the future because people are going to want it in the future? Or do you just wait and not take advantage of this time? Or is it even taking advantage of this time? And that's a me thing, or is it an everyone thing?
It's an everyone thing. And I think it's a really valid question, because I think a lot of us are trying to figure out where to go with this. Should we be offering discounted or free services? I think that the reality is that people are home, they're standing still, and they're looking for stuff, whether that is, education or connection or services that, that they can experience. And I don't think it's necessarily a time that we should discount. But what I would say is that if we lead with value, so if we offer something, perhaps, a small session, like you and I talked at the beginning of the call about, 15-minute session of whatever it may be, but then the option to purchase the bigger ticket item, because I think people are willing. I think, it's funny because somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, I think it was a week one, well, nobody's going to be buying art. And I would have agreed with them. I would have said, yep, you're right. No one's buying art. The economy's in the trash. No one knows what the hell's going on. And then a week later, I spoke with somebody who works at one of the major painting companies, like house paint. And they said, we are so busy. Everybody's buying paint because they're home and they're looking at their walls and they're redecorating and they're reorganizing their space. Like, that's what people are doing right now. Like, and not just on a physical level. People are looking for online courses. They're looking to, sharpen up skills because they do have this time. So
And thank you for your course, by the way.
Of course, please.
Life-changing.
It was a pleasure. And, and to be able to offer that value and be available to people it wasn't just good for them. It was good for me. It kept me on track. It kept me sane, because running an events company right now is not, I have a lot of free time on my hands. So why not be of service, provide something of value, but also, don't be afraid to have your premium services available at their usual cost, because there are customers, there are clients out there that are looking for your services.
I
So,
like that. Thank you for that perspective. It
oh,
really, it was when you were speaking, something clicked in my head that was like, yeah, you're a value. That's lead with the value.
yeah,
That's it. I love
that's it.
that. We
Well,
should do like a virtual, how do we do a virtual art show?
we're
We
doing
should
it
all.
right now. You
Where
mean
are
if
my
it,
art
with
pieces?
the physical? Well, I actually have a few ideas on that, but we're going to chat off camera about that. But
What?
let's talk about tell people how they can work with you in terms of readings.
Yep.
For those who don't know, who are joining us right at the end of the session, Cam is a shaman. She's amazing. She's a whole host of other amazing creative things as well. But if you want to get a reading with Cam or learn more about her premium services, tell our community how they can do that.
Yes. Now, this part is going to be great because I would love to offer complimentary 15-minute reading for all the artists because I know that we are all like, where do we go from here? Are we going the right direction? Really is the question. Am I putting my efforts in the right direction? Well, I believe that's something that Spirit answers for us constantly. And I'm open to hearing those answers and also giving guidance where needed. So if you'd like a 15-minute angel card reading with guidance, then you have to just go to my website, www.thecamera.com. And then on the bookings tab, there's going to be where it says, what does it say? I should
I'm
have
just
known this before.
putting it in the comments right now. It's www.thecamera is with a
A
K.
dash. Yeah,
Oh,
KAM dash ERA
all right, it's in the
dot
comments
com.
right now.
And the
Anyone?
book online. And I'm gonna go on right after this and put in a coupon code. And
Perfect.
then maybe I'll text it to you so you can add it.
Absolutely.
And it'll give you a free 15-minute session. We'll just do it via Skype or FaceTime, or you can just call. I'll have instructions once you book it. Now that process is already worked out. I just got to put the coupon in.
Awesome. Well, Cam, thank you. I couldn't think of
Thank
anyone
you.
better to kick this kind of coffee with artists session off than you. I mean, you've always been such an amazing part of this big creative family that we have, and we, just so appreciate you. And I always leave any interaction that we have or any interview that we do, I always leave feeling so much more positive about the world and where we're going. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are awesome. Thank you. You guys be safe and enjoy the downtime, I guess.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will be back tomorrow for another session of Coffee with Artists. And once again, if you want to work with Cam, check out www.thecam.com. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you soon.